speaker, just because, yeah. Fuck. So I feel like every time we start, it's it just kind of like radiates just inefficiency,
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
unprofessionalism. But I guess that's part of the.
Well, one could just call it unrefined, organic,
Yeah,
character,
Well,
authentic.
100%, 100%. Well, that's usually what inefficient and unprofessional people like to rebrand themselves as an excuse. Right, do you know what? This is another thing that just fucking bothers me. Aside from all the other reasons Skype is shit, just you've got the recording button over the fucking speaker, so I can't. Oh, fuck. Right. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. It's all
It
done.
is recorded.
Oh, it is recording. Yeah. No, it's just I wanted to take speaker off, and you've got this top right hand side. When it's recording, you've got a recording tab, which is an overlay over the overlay over. It's an overlay, so it's kind of you've got to wait for it kind of just to disappear and then attempt to click it. But yeah, what's the topic of conversation for podcast 6, Truth 6? Is it Truths? Wait, that's not what our series is called. What's our series called? JJ Talks.
Exactly, that's it. Keeping the radiation of unprofessionalism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. And that was genuine as well. I wasn't even attempting to exaggerate. It is all organic, audience. Yeah. So what were we talking about? We had a little brief.
Pedos.
Pedos. Matthew Perry. Not that Matthew Perry's a pedo. I mean, he might have been, but I don't think so. Or maybe. And then what was the other topic? Pedos, Matthew Perry, and that video you just sent me on Instagram was intended to spark a conversation within the podcast. Because did you see the guy's cocaine nose?
Sorry, which guy?
The guy with he'd pay you $100 if his little trick to his morning ritual doesn't change your life.
Yes.
But his left nostril, he snorted about probably a fucking kilo a week of cocaine. I love it how like they get these guys that have like not always men, to be fair, but it's just people that are clearly just fucking mental, and they lead like the most extreme lives, and then they have like a fucking what's it called, like a kind of eureka moment where they're like, I found my way to live like efficiently, organically, whatever you want to call it. But then you look at them and you think, I think you've just had a breakdown. You've reached the end. And it's always like something like, yeah, I found a magic crystal on the beach in Taiwan and it just changed my life. And now I live in a room of pink crystals. It's always something that's just stupid. It's never like, oh, I have a small coffee in the morning and I get in my 1992 Subaru Impreza and I go to a place near my town that just makes me feel good. I sit there with my sandwich that I bought from Sainsbury's for £2. It's nothing like that regular people can just associate themselves with. It's always something just wanky, isn't it? Just like, yeah, I told myself, I love me like 150 times in the mirror, and then I bang out 500 press ups, and I just feel great. It's always something fucking annoying. But they're like the guy as well. He doesn't look like a particularly healthy chap. That's why I gravitated towards the cocaine nostril. That's the real like insight as to why he's on a fucking Joe Rogan podcast. Aside from the fact that he's just banged a 9-year-old in the basement, because I feel like that is exactly how you get on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's. So yeah, I guess we can go. We've just covered all bases there. We've covered the Instagram video, fucking pedos. I don't know if Matthew Perry was ever on Joe Rogan. I hope not, because I actually quite liked Matthew Perry. I thought it was quite funny. Best character in Friends for me.
I mean, he was part of
the cabal,
one of the shows of all time. But however, a lot of these people, are tools, and they're not necessarily all complicit or aware of like the grand nature of the scheme that they're involved in. They just know maybe that they've got privileges, or they know that they can kind of maybe get away with certain things and not understand fully why. However, I just don't understand how somebody can drown in a jacuzzi. A jacuzzi that they would have been in. Like, how?
And then
Your
it's
head doesn't go
suicides ruled
underwater
out.
in a jacuzzi. It's a sea.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. It's literally ridiculous. But that's a part of the mockery, isn't it? Like the guy was murdered, and I feel like we can relate this to 9-year-olds getting banged in basements because we know that Hollywood, you're complicit to some extent. Again, like people have different degrees of that kind of being a part of the system. But there was a really funny quote in an obituary this morning about Matthew Perry, and it was about how apparently when he was on Friends, he was an alcoholic, he was drinking a lot. And Jennifer Aniston, who is a known fucking pedophile, child molester, adrenochrome drinker, constantly mocking child abuse through her Instagram and through various live chat shows. She's mentioned pizza during the Pizzagate, prior to Pizzagate, so many times to mock the public because she's consuming fucking young boys' blood. And she said to Matthew Perry, she said, we all know, Matthew, we can smell it on your breath. And I wish Matthew had turned around. Perhaps he did, which is why he ended up drowning in the jacuzzi. I wish Matthew turned around and said, "Well, Jennifer, yeah, I do have a couple of scotches for breakfast, but at least I don't fucking slice a 9-year-old's throat and consume their blood." I wish he had said that because, I'd have more respect because for sure he was a part of the system and that's probably why he was done. But I can't obviously fully respect the guy because he probably went to a fair few parties where, there's fucking 9 to 15-year-olds in knickers. So, it is what it is.
Quite possible, especially in like the early 90s, late 80s.
Oh, especially early 90s, yeah.
I mean, it was the fucking Wild West. That you could do anything then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, cocaine was just like, it was late 70s, early 80s. It was basically just a given with your drink. You fucking pay it off on the tab in a bar. Adrenochrome was probably not too far off. So, yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
Whole nonsense was going on. Nonsense was like socially acceptable, like once upon a time, like completely, like even as recent as the late 90s, 30-year-old man, 25-year-old man drives to school, 15 or 16-year-old jumps in the car. And like,
that is true, actually. Yeah, that is true.
So yeah, like this is, and in like the 70s and 80s, just like I mean, I'm from England, so I can just tell you that it's just like everybody had like a nonce in their family, like literally. It was like, don't stay around that uncle's house, or this uncle touched this, but like,
I mean, technically, my granddad. This is a really bad thing to say about your own granddad. I'm going to be very careful with my words here, but my granddad was 40 years old and my grandmother was 18. Now,
I mean, do you know what?
I mean,
okay,
we're talking about
the
50s, though, the 1950s.
That is literally the cusp. That is literally the cusp. Because you've got to think to yourself, it's generation, like there's a context to it. So let's just say your granddad, what, about 90 now? 90?
Oh no, he was way old. So no, he passed away in the 90s, nearly 90
Right.
in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that means that at the point that he met her, that would have been like the 50s, right?
Yeah, 1950s. 1950s. He was 40, she was 18, but this is when they married. But it's still legal because the legal age is 16 anyway.
Yeah.
And I think it was 15 for marriage. I think it still is 15 for marriage, isn't it? Or it's just changed recently, which doesn't make any fucking sense if the age of consent is 16 and marriage is 15. Yeah, it's Scotland. I'm 100%, literally 100% that you can get married, or you could until very recently in Scotland at 15 years old. But the UK age of consent is 16. But it's a bit like the army, isn't it? It's a bit like the army, and the same thing. I think in the US, you can sign up to the military at 15, but you can't drive a car until later. I don't know if it's 16 or 18, but you can definitely own a firearm and be in the military enrolled before you can legally, drive or buy alcohol or cigarettes in a shop. It's ridiculous. It's obviously fucking mental. But yeah, no, I totally, the whole pedo thing, like for sure, you know, there is a kind of culture to it. But then again, it gets into difficult ground, doesn't it? Because just because something's a culture doesn't mean it's acceptable. Like
No,
paedophilia is a culture.
no, it's
Yeah, that's the
definitely
thing.
not.
Yeah.
But it's something that's always, I mean, we can go back to the official narrative that goes back to, you know, like ancient Rome, and they used to have like orgies and like all these like great, you know, Greek philosophers, very similar to what's happening in Afghanistan today.
Yeah, that's
Is
true.
people
Yeah.
that claim to be heterosexual, but they have these little boyfriends that they break in, like they've all got like little boy mistresses on the side, and this is the things that people, and these are like things that people in high society generally do. I think it does obviously trickle down, but there's like something synonymous with people in power and having like submissive sexual submissive people around them.
I actually think this is a perfect directive for the conversation because I think sexual potency, let's say unbalanced sexual potency, is the origin of gaining a position of absolute authority within society. Because we've spoken about before how you need something that can be utilized by those that truly govern above all else as a mechanism by which to guarantee as an insurance policy that you're not going to betray the system, and also that you're driven enough to do and undertake whatever it is that they tell them to, which more than often is going to be something sadistic and evil. And I think there's nothing else as potent as sexuality that can be applied to high-end politics and power play. You know, you can get serial killers, you can get murderers, irrespective of any kind of like involvement of sexual prowess. But I feel like murderers, you know, do weird sexual stuff. It's like it's the next level. So I think that's why paedophilia is so prominent within the higher echelons, because they use it to blackmail. They use it as a mechanism by which, you know, they can. It's like giving a dog its favorite bone. Well, when you've got a 45-year-old man that wants to bang a 5-year-old boy, that's his favorite bone. It's difficult to get, but the cabal will get it for you if you're willing to do this, this, and this. And then, of course, when you just employ pedophiles, not only are they all, you know, affixed, they're all similar in that degree, literally speaking, pun intended. Yeah, I think they work together more cohesively, just like any drug addicts would. If you fucking throw some fentanyl out in the air, they're all going to scurry over to it and try their best to pluck it up. Yeah, I think it really is the core and the crux of securing a kind of Overwatch.
And it's funny that you say Overwatch, because we also spoke about something like this recently, that a lot of these people who are pedophiles and who are sexual deviants look like pedophiles and sexual deviants a lot of the time. They do. And when you said like Overwatch, there was somebody who's like an auditor where I work. I can't give too much details, but he's an auditor, and he kind of has like quite a high position. And like, you came over enough of it, and you know, it was the second time seeing this guy, but the first time finding out what it was that he did. And yeah, I don't know, he just has that vibe about him that, you know, I just looked at him, I just thought, you seem a bit dark and noncy, basically. And coincidentally, like, somebody who looks so uninspiring to be given such a position possibly means that he's, yeah, maybe he's a part of a lodge somewhere. And you know, I've known Masons in the past. I used to work with one. He was a former nurse and school teacher.
Oh dear, that's the ultimate dodgy combo.
You know, like, and yeah, and then he worked for the career service after that. And
Red flags.
Yeah, it's just, you know, very interesting. And you know, he was somebody whose hands used to wander in the office as well, like some of the ladies were making
Really?
comments. Yeah. So it's just, and yeah, and if you look
Although
at the
usually they don't go together, I find. So he could just be a pervert, but I find pedophiles usually aren't interested in anyone over the age of 5.
yeah,
It's just generally because I feel like they have to go to that age because they're incapable of interacting with, men or women of their age bracket. That's why they have to go so low. Like they don't have the ability to, I don't know what it is, whether it's confidence, whether it's just like a kind of an actual genetic, I guess, potency, thrill for those that are younger. But usually it doesn't go hand in hand. You don't get pedos like banging, I don't know, 40-year-old men or 40-year-old women and then banging like 10-year-old kids. It's like one or the other.
yeah. Generally, however, occasionally you do get people like that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are some famous examples, and there's definitely a great example. Like literally, the amount of fathers that literally like do the deed with daughters, like okay, a great example would be like, I don't know, Woody Allen, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he had adult women in his life.
Yeah, but
And
he
then
looked like a
a
fucking
pedo.
creepo.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
100%.
he
He
was
looked like a
serious in the
pedo.
book. Yeah.
And the girlfriends or the wives might have just been there as a cover, as a
Oh,
kind of technicality to the,
exactly.
the position of being a
Exactly.
Hollywood star.
Yeah, and they often are. And like you do hear about, stories as well with even, just your everyday civilian. And like this guy who's got a wife and kids, and people thought he was a bit yeah, kind of normal, quiet, etc. And he was looking at kiddie porn and whatever on his so I mean these people definitely do exist, but yeah, generally speaking, it's like there sometimes you can just see it on people,
Yeah, a
essentially.
lot of them. A lot of them. I actually
Um,
had the same thing recently when I thought of this being kind of like, we could have a good conversation about this topic because it's exactly what you've just said. Literally exactly. There was a guy in the hostel and he was one of those like weird old men, but not that, one goes hand in hand with the other, but he just looked weird, odd guy. He's got a great story as well, which ties into what we're talking about. But this guy was really weird, and I just didn't like. I don't think anyone did gravitate towards him. But eventually, he just happened to be eating breakfast in the same restaurant as I was. So kind of we made conversation, and just kind of like the basics. And he was telling me how he used to be a limousine driver for a famous team that was in the NBA, and he would drive the players to parties and then back to the stadiums. And I asked him the question because obviously, it's a given, doesn't really require an answer. I just wanted to see his reaction. But it was like, well, you're driving NBA players to private parties. You must have seen a hell of a lot in those limousines. And he said, yeah, things so illegal, but I'm unable to divulge basically, that. And the entire time we're talking, there are all these young girls, like young, we're talking children in this breakfast hall, and he can't keep his eyes to him fucking self. Every time a 9-year-old girl walks by or 11-year-old, his eyes are straight on it. And it's not just me that's noticing it. I'm feeling fucking awkward because I'm having a conversation with this guy and I don't want other people in this cafe because he's being so fucking blatant about it, thinking that I'm a mate of his. And it's just one of those things I literally can't. I'm sure he's, smart enough to realize that it doesn't look good for him to be doing that. But this is the thing, they literally can't keep their fucking hands to themselves. Like they're absolute disgusting individuals. I mean, and that's exactly why you find many of them roaming around in South America or just anywhere in the world, anywhere, outside of the West where there are generally greater chances of repercussions for your actions. You
100%.
find them, yeah, weird old men who just are weird. They've got that weird vibe, wandering around looking for either young wives, and it's not just old men. Actually, I'll take that back. There was a guy recently in this was in Ecuador in where was it called? Is it Cuevas? No, not Cuevas. Someplace I can't fucking remember it. South Ecuador, nice hostel. There's a Belgian guy in there, And he looked really young for his age. He was actually older than me. He was on his way to becoming an older man, which was bloody amazing genetically. But you know when you meet someone and you're having a decent conversation, they're a bit weird straight off the bat. They're always a bit weird, but you make exceptions for some people. They're just eccentric, and sometimes weird people can be quite fun and have good stories. But all of a sudden, like, some of them just say something that's just so fucking rude in the middle of public. Like, they start, I don't know, like talking about a lady or whatever. Thankfully for this guy, I don't think he was a pedo. He definitely was interested in younger ladies, but at least like early 20s. He's like late 30s. And but he'd just say something like in a public place that you just would never say. Not just because you're an educated individual or like you've got manners. It's just not even an uneducated, ill-mannered individual would rise to that point. Like, he said something just so disgusting, like really loud in public, like, I would just do this, and this. I was just thinking, fucking hell, like, is it like that he doesn't have a filter, or again, is there like that weird sexual potency that's just so unbalanced in some of these individuals that, again, the ones that gravitate towards being pedos, like the one I was talking about previously, where he can't keep his fucking eyes to himself in a public place when little girls are walking by, they just unable to control themselves. It's like a complete imbalance of hormones or whatever within their system, that it's just, which makes them the fucking animals that they are. So yeah, I was just thinking about that. What do you reckon to that? Like, what's the origin of it?
There is definitely a compulsive element to a lot of their behaviour, I'd say. I mean, the lengths that a lot of these people, go to in order to fulfill their fantasies, and like, it's almost like, hard to comprehend, but it's like, the fact that, like I said, some of these people have families and their lives get thrown away because of this bizarre desire that they have. It's literally like an illness. I don't think somebody can learn to be that way. It's almost like you said, some kind of strange genetic quirk, and people that
I think so.
yeah, and people that are
like,
that need to be segregated or taken out of the equation with normal human beings in some way or another.
But do you think it's like with extreme junkies? Obviously, the drive is different, but the origin of that is the inability to just control themselves. Like, I'm not talking about the regular drug addicts. I'm talking about someone that like has gone from being something to just bathing in their own shit, literally. Like, at no point was there the desire or the kind of the drive, let's say, the force, the confidence, whatever you want to call it, to stop. Like, you see people, there's documentaries on people that started just with a regular job, regular house, and then all of a sudden they became addicted to something, whether it's heroin or fentanyl. And there are all these times where you can stop. And understandably, because it's an addiction, it is difficult, just like smoking or anything else. But surely you think to yourself, when you're rolling around in animal shit on the street corner of Skid Row, being able to contrast the life you had previously, where you were going back home to a bed and you had a house or a girlfriend or a wife or whatever, why would you not stop? And how long did it take to get to that point where you still had money in the bank, you still had the capacity to bail yourself out before you sold your car and defaulted on your payments and all that kind of stuff? Like, how can you get to the point where you've been wearing the same underwear for like 2 months and you're rolling in your own shit? Do you know what I mean? And comparing that to pedophilia, and that these people are willing to just fucking like throw it all away to look at some fucking children on the internet. Like you said, examples of people that have families, but secretly on the side, because of this illness, because of this fucking disgusting characteristic that is in their, in their entity, they're willing to just like throw it all away. They can't even control that sickening. And I'm sure there are people that do have this as well, that do control themselves and never act on it. But just like that, like you said, that compulsive fucking desire these psychos have. Same with serial killers like Ted Bundy, same kind of thing. The guy had a wife and kids, didn't he? Did he have kids? He had a wife and kids, didn't he? Yeah, he did.
He
Ted Bundy. Yeah.
misses and
Yeah.
he used to brutalize her. And and he's one of these strange, because I believe a couple of his victims were underage, like early teens, like maybe like 13 or 14 or something like that. And in the 70s and 60s, men having relationships with, like, I mean, it was just kind of just way more socially acceptable. It was like almost like the Wild West, and I'm glad that we've progressed from that, because it's just, it's just wholly bizarre. Like I said, in like the 80s and 90s, it was just very common, and these things still go on. But it was just like everyone just knew, oh yeah, that's like the fucking neighborhood nonce. He lives over there. Everyone, whatever. Like,
It's
you know,
Gary.
yeah,
Gary
Gary.
Lineker. He used to be a professional footballer, and now he just hangs around Diane. Oh my god.
Like that walk
Fucking
past
hate Gary
this,
Lineker.
and yeah, it's just like this, just really, just bizarre perversion, and the source of it, and like what happens is like just like this weird quirk, like people who believe that they're another gender, weird quirk. It's like all of these, whatever, people that are asexual, people that are hermaphrodites, whatever it may be, just like people have all these
Lady
different,
Gaga.
yeah, great example. And maybe even Michelle Obama as well.
Oh, for
um,
sure. No, yeah, I believe it, 100%. Yeah, yeah. They're all involved. Amy Winehouse was definitely a bloke as well, or maybe a bloke. We had this debate before, didn't we? But I think probably, um, just given that uh, the capacity that they have to change someone's aesthetic. Again, it's very comparable to defense contractors and the technology that they have available to them, decades and decades in advance of what we're capable of receiving on the public end of thing. It's the same with surgery. I mean, if you look at like, what are they called? I guess transgender sex change shops in Thailand and places like that now. I mean, there are some good-looking individuals in Thailand that you would never know, or good-looking now self-proclaimed ladies that used to be blokes. And like the technology is so advanced, and these are people with less resources at their disposal. These are people that are like, I don't know, saving up for a couple of years, getting like 50 grand in the bank, and then like going kind of full hog and having the whole, so-called transformation. But think of what like governments are capable of, and of course we know what they're capable of with respect to like inciting wars, applying their occultist agendas, and creating systems of technology that again we can't comprehend, but what we know about. So if it came down to something like a kind of surgical transformations that people like El Chapo went through, and what the other guy's name, I forget, the Colombian cartel leader, back in the 80s and 90s when they were completely unidentifiable. Imagine what the cabal can apply. So the idea of like people like Amy Winehouse being blokes, Michelle Obama being blokes, it's really not that far fetched. It's just people are so behind when it comes to understanding how behind we are as a culture. One being a derivative of that, the fact that they're not researching is the fact why we're not cohesively in a group, being able to compete with the kind of minority agenda at hand. The play of the kind of the game developers, as it were. It's not incomprehensible, is it?
no, not at all. I mean, they say that the military industrial complex, for lack of a better term, the cabal, are about 200 years ahead of
Yeah,
what
it's true.
they drip feed us in regards of technology. So yeah, absolutely, the iPhone 30's already been developed.
Oh
Yeah.
no, 100%. Yeah, and actually, it's like it's self-fulfilling. They're prophecy, for lack of a better term, because the dumber we become, the larger the gap. So the gap widens more rapidly as every year passes. It's a bit like the disparity between those that have and those don't have, and how the cost of living has perpetually increased. And that gap between the minimum wage and what it actually costs has just exponentially divided society. And that is just like you say, if the military industrial complexes are roughly 200 years, as a kind of like out there guesstimate, or whether it's a guess or a kind of objective take on what they have or what we've known them to have in recent times, it's totally believable and totally understandable, very plausible. But then it's going to be 300 years, in the next 10 years, and 400 years in the next 7 years, or next or 12 years, and it gets that gap widens in a shorter period of time, because we just become so defunct and deficient as a society, because we're lacking the very technology we need to advance to their level.
Exactly that. And like I said, and because they're drip feeding us, right? And they're still advancing constantly while they drip feed us, and what they're drip feeding us could, that's what we're up against. And that's why I don't think it can be fought with them in a physical sense. It's probably more of a psychological sense, and maybe in a legal sense, but in a physical sense, there's not much you can do. There still exists a legal framework whereby, in theory, humans have power, but most people are too brainwashed and propagandized to even do that. And then, even if people do that, obviously they have the option to turn to their technology to subdue people that way, and it's literally endless blue beam technology.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
They can literally implant thoughts and make you behave how they want you to behave, if they
which is what we might be doing, to be fair. I mean, there's no reason why that hasn't already been fully implemented, because that goes into that long-winded philosophical wormhole, which is, are we not just a computer program, and is this not a matrix? If you can implant thoughts, which they can do, then the very thought of our existence being a biological, organic derivative of birth and all this kind of stuff, then that's just an implanted thought within a kind of AI framework, really. A simulation is the term I was looking for.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. It's absolutely possible. I think what we would need to find to verify that would be...
Is Matthew Perry's cause of death.
Yeah, which definitely was not drowning. Like, if it was drowning, it was because someone fucking held his head underwater. How does...
Well, that's part of the joke, isn't it? That's probably why they publicised it in that way. Matthew Perry drowns, not considered suicide, not considered suspicious. Well, what does that leave? Like, it's exactly as he said it was. Someone fucking held his head under the water.
I mean, was he alone? Because I'm just trying to think, like, yeah, I'm going to have a jacuzzi by myself on a Saturday night. Like, what?
They're just going to come out and say, which is of course possible, we can't deny it, but they just come out and say, well, he OD'd on opioids, because I think he was obviously struggling on and off with opioid addiction of other kind of drug forms, and they're just going to come out and say, oh yeah, we found in his system in the autopsy like a fuck ton of drugs, and he obviously just slipped into like a coma and fell underwater, which just doesn't happen, because especially like a professional junkie, like, I don't want to call him junkie, but professional drug user like Matthew Perry, guy's not going to take a ton of whatever and just fucking sit in a jacuzzi on a Saturday night himself, is he? You're absolutely right. He's at least going to have two women there with him. The guy's a Hollywood star. It's ridiculous. It's like, it's absurd.
Yeah, I'm interested in this. October the 28th.
You're looking at the numbers, the numerology.
Yeah, he's born on
54
days. Born on August the 19th, 1969. Goes out
magic
with the
numbers there.
I mean, you had at 54, 549, 3 times 3.
I thought the origin of his acting career was interesting, because I always find there's like a pedo fucking central forefront to the kind of the early years of these characters. And he started as a junior tennis player who was actually ranked, so he was good. But that's just the type of place you just get collected by the cabal, isn't it? Like, you're fucking there in your tight shorts, fucking playing tennis, and Amy fucking Wines. What's his name? I I keep mixing up Amy Winehouse and Harvey Weinstein. Amy Weinstein or Harvey Winehouse. So yeah, Harvey fucking Weinstein's probably there jerking off in the fucking stands, sees Matthew Perry, fucking molests him, and then they get them in to become their Hollywood fucking, what's the thing called? The psyop, the psychological operation from the Vietnam conflict, or at least that's what it's commonly aligned to. You know the one I mean? Begins with M.
It begins with an M.
Yeah, M. The one where they've mentally
MK Ultra.
MK Ultra. Yeah, they've all just been MK Ultra. They've basically just been fucking slotted into their positions, having been abused as children. They're literally bred for abuse, most of them as well. Which is why you take like what's her name, Adele, as an example. I always get Adele at the front of my mind because that picture, which I think you might have shared with me a while ago, is it's a series of Hollywood stars dressing their children up as the opposite sex. So it's literally just like they've got little boys and they're dressing them up in fucking dresses and stuff like this, and they're like 6, 7 years old because they're fucking molesting them. They're molding them to be the next Matthew Perry in his tight shorts at fucking, you know, a junior tennis game, waiting for either Harvey Weinstein or one of his pedo brethren to, you know, decide if they want the male or the female that evening. And then again, they slot them into these positions, and that way they can manipulate them for the rest of their years. I mean, that's essentially why pedophiles are employed by those above them. It's a pyramid scheme. It's the exact same system. So you have the people in the top, you know, the Warburgs, the Rothschilds, the big families, or people like them who employ groups of pedophiles to undertake their evil fucking agendas. And then the pedophiles themselves then take people they abuse and they remold them, knowing that they can thereon manipulate them and control their actions because they've got that constantly on them. You know, the fact that they abuse them. So I think it's that system. A lot of the backgrounds of these celebrities are very odd. I mean, you take what's his name from Zombieland, bald guy. I always forget his name. Good actor. Do you know the guy I mean? His dad used to be a fucking professional assassin for the CIA. Like, it's amazing how all these people have these parents. My parents weren't professional assassins for the CIA. Who are these people? Do you know what I mean? Like, they always have a very bizarre origin.
Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson, yeah, his dad was a fucking contract killer. Like, it's ridiculous. It's literally ridiculous. And then you take the guy from Frasier. What's his name? You've seen Frasier, haven't you?
Yep.
Frasier's got in his family, like 3 of his family members have been murdered. Like, how is that possible? The guy lives in the US. His sister's been murdered. I think his daughter's been murdered. Another member of his family's been murdered, all apparently coincidental. And then take the most famous one of all time, the British rock singer. What's his name? Do you know your name? If I saw you in heaven. What's this guy's fucking name? One of the greatest guitar players of all time.
Not Sting.
No. One of the greatest British guitar player of all time. His son fell out of a fucking hotel window and splatted to the floor. His other child died. Then he married a woman who lost 3 children, also a Hollywood star. They've lost 5 children between them. Do people believe this bullshit? Like, literally all their kids are murdered as part of the fucking satanic ritual. Just like Heath Ledger was murdered because he refused to allow his daughter to be prostituted to a Masonic fucking party. That's the rumor on the dark web, and I completely believe it. Heath Ledger's daughter was good looking, and one of the Masonic fucking wizards wanted to basically bang her, and he was like, no. But he had to say yes because that's what he agreed to when he joined the cabal. Because they promise you, they're fucking satanic. They promise you fame and fortune, but you sign your soul, and they can choose to cash that in at any point. And they chose to cash it in for his daughter, and he said no, so they killed him. And that's what happened with this guy. What's his name? British rock star. Eric Clapton. Yeah, Eric Clapton. If you look at his own children and the children of his ex-partners, they've had 5 child deaths between them, which is fucking insane. And the reason is because Eric Clapton has obviously failed to abide by the conditions of his bought fame. And that's what they do. And it's not even a conspiracy. It literally says this stuff in Albert Pike's Freemasonic fucking rules, which they all abide by. He's the most respected member of Freemasonry of all time. And the punishment for betraying your brethren is death, period. And then he lists in the book the different ways to kill people. Another example is Blackfriars Bridge in London is called Blackfriars because it's the bridge of the Freemasons, and Freemasons would dress up in costumes similar to how members of the Spanish Inquisition would dress. So they nicknamed the bridge Blackfriars. And on Blackfriars, so many fucking high-end suicides have happened. It's fucking insane. In Operation Gladio, people involved in, the systematic destruction of European political autonomy post-Second World War, loads of individuals ended up getting fucking suicided off Blackfriars Bridge. And it was obviously specifically done on that bridge because it's Blackfriars Bridge, named as a Masonic form of ritual sacrifice. It's mad. They're all fucking mad. Like, no one loses 5 kids as a fucking Hollywood celebrity. Most people don't lose 5 kids, period, unless they all get sent into the fucking front line in First World War. And going back to Frasier, how it started, Frasier, this guy whose name slips my mind, the guy that started the TV show Frasier, has lost 3 members of his family to random murderers and serial killers. Again, it's just not possible. That doesn't happen in the real world unless there's like intentional, systematic foul play.
Yeah, and even the dates of Eric Clapton's son, who died after quote unquote falling from the 53rd floor window.
It's insane. Yeah.
53rd floor, right? Okay. He was born on a cusp, the 21st of August, 1986, and he died on a cusp, the 20th of March, 1991. So, you had all the factors that you've just spoken of, and if you're aware of the numerology, on top of that, it's like a cherry on top. If you have any doubts as to it being a systematic, planned event, it's I mean, reality stranger than fiction, a lot of the time, and
which is the name of a movie. That's very good for our audience members of 3 or 4 of you. Do watch that movie. Little sideline there.
Where are we? 42
Where are we on the
minutes.
40 minutes in. Oh, should we? We should start consolidating to, I think, like 30 minutes ish. I think that's what people prefer. I don't know. I don't mind, but people might get bored of our pedophile antics.
I can listen to a podcast last night, 2 hours, 3 hours. But I suppose it's just a matter of the time difference and the fact that I actually have to.
Oh, you have to sleep. You have to work. You have to work.
Yeah.
Damn, man. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess we'll wrap it up there for our the individuals listening who work as, what were the 3 things that potential pedo worked as? A career analyst. What were the other 2? A nurse and a school teacher. Do you know what that is? The ultimate pedo. It's like the triple win, isn't it? Like, all pedos usually start as PE teachers, and then they advance to career analysts within the secondary school, and then when they get fired from that, they work for the NHS.
Yeah. I mean, all of them give you access to kids, basically.
That is true. Absolutely. Okay, well, yeah, we can wrap it up there. And any final thoughts? Any cherries to add onto the cake? Any icing?
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts are is that hopefully we've let people know that a lot of the things that are presented aren't necessarily as they are. That if something looks and smells and acts like a nonce, it probably is a nonce. And and these people, if you kind of analyze them and see patterns. The behavior seems to be compulsive, and therefore, to an extent, it's almost like a incurable, state of mind. And then I suppose society needs to look at a way of addressing these individuals and eradicating them. And when I say eradicating them, yeah, that can sound like somewhat of a harsh term, but the behaviour needs to be eradicated. And I say that, and maybe it never will be. However, through natural selection, I suppose if these people are taken out of the gene pool, then just like dogs, certain traits can be brought out of humanity. So yeah, that might be something.
I think it's the opposite, though. I think it's the opposite.
But I
think that's a good.
The thing. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
no, but as a transition for the next podcast, a thing that has bothered me for a while is how so many seemingly or apparently unrelated individuals within Hollywood or the higher echelons of society look so fucking identical to each other. And again, it's because they all go to these fucking Eyes Wide Shut parties, reference to the Nicole Tom Cruise movie, and literally everything's just there on a plate, and they're all part of the same higher social strata, and they all end up just fucking banging each other. And it doesn't matter who the parents are, the kids will naturally end up in positions of authority, unwarranted, of course, through their own, abilities, but they're placed there as a consequence of their biological links. And it's like people like, if you look at Boris Johnson, the guy looks exactly like Jacob Rothschild to the point where he has characteristics that are so specific. He has a slanted eye, slanted left or right eye. I believe it's left, but we can cross check that. And if you take a close up of him, just the facial structure, the guy is linked to the Rothschilds, and of course he is. The guy's family is, aristocratic in origin, related to Turkish merchants who are of Jewish origin as well. And it would be no surprise, because that is the origin of wealth. They keep it within blood, and that's the greatest guarantee they have, the ultimate insurance policy. So yeah,
100%. Yeah, every single one of the wealthiest families in the world come from the same bloodline. That's absolutely proven fact with receipts. The genealogy shows it, and it's amazing. It's just there for everybody to see if they care to have a look. But yeah, let's make them care.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Everyone, thanks for listening, and we will try our best to be insightful in the next episode, podcast 7, which will be posted at some point. But until then, appreciate it, and thanks very much. Au revoir, James. I'll speak to you soon.
Hasta luego.
Bye.